September 2002. Look, I don't remember what was going on in my life in September of 2002 that was making me read all these media tie-ins. There are 9 books we're going to go over. Only 4 of them are not media tie-ins, but 3 of those 4 are part of a series. Let's jump right in. The first book I read in September 2002 was Buffy the Vampire Slayer Crossings by Mel Odom. Now, I learned something today. Apparently, the descriptions on Amazon, or the back cover copy of the book, are not always accurate. And so, for a lot of these books that I don't remember, I read the description on Amazon. And if there's not quite enough detail for my liking, I read the reviews. And it was pointed out in the reviews that one of the things on the back cover copy was wrong. So, in and it had happened before, according to one review. In Buffy the Vampire Slayer Crossings by Mel Odom, takes place after Buffy's mother has died. She and Dawn, Buffy being she, Buffy and Dawn are dealing with that. Meanwhile, Xander and Anya have gone to some sort of convention, and there's a video game that has a demon that is pulling people into the video game, using them as minions to collect body parts so this demon can resurrect another demon in the real world, something like that. And, Buffy and the Scooby Gang are going to have to deal with all this. There's some other stuff going on. But it's mainly about the video game and the demon. In the description on Amazon, and apparently on the back cover, it says that Anya is the one that gets pulled into the video game. But it is, according to all of the reviews I read, it is clearly Xander. So, if I've ever described a book on here and anyone's picked it up and said, hey, some of that information was wrong, it's because I'm getting bad information, because I don't remember these books from September 2002. So anyway, Buffy the Vampire Slayer Crossings by Mel Odom, a video game demon. Next up, we have Grave Peril by Jim Butcher. I believe this is the 3rd in the Dresden Files. Harry Dresden, a wizard, a private investigator, private wizard in Chicago. And in this one, someone is stirring up the ghosts in Chicago, causing trouble. Harry's got to figure out why. This is a decent series. I did not read the entire thing, but I remember enjoying the books that I did read. It's one that I keep considering going back to if I didn't have so many other things to read. I would consider going back and starting from the beginning and reading through the Dresden Files. He's an interesting character, being a private eye, sort of, but he's a wizard in Chicago. Grave Peril, Jim Butcher. If you're looking for some urban fantasy, it's a decent series. The one nonfiction book that I read in September 2002, Code of the Samurai, translated by Thomas Cleary. So this is actually, it's the Bushido Shoshinshu. Shoshinshu. Bushido Shoshinshu. It's difficult to say. Which translated is allegedly Bushido for beginners. And it is what the title says it is, the Code of the Samurai. This was written hundreds of years ago to be, how to live your life as a samurai. And it's one of those books that, people in corporate America read. And it's pretty interesting. Another book that I might reread someday. I've read The Art of War and the Book of Five Rings, Code of Samurai. I like this kind of stuff. And that's basically it. It is an old book translated into English about how to live your life if you're a samurai. And it's one of those that people apply to modern day. Followed that up with The King by David Feintuck. I love David Feintuck's Hope series, Fisherman's Hope, or Midshipman's Hope, Fisherman's Hope, Children Hope, all those, which was science fiction, perhaps military science fiction. This is fantasy. It is the long-awaited follow-up to his first fantasy book, The Still. And in this, our main character is Rodrigo. He is now the king after the events of The Still. And the Still is a body of water. He can look into it and gain the wisdom of his ancestors. Now he's the king, and he's dealing with treachery from within, people that don't think he deserves to be the king, as well as invaders to his country, which is Caledon. I think that's how you would say it. Didn't enjoy these as much as I love the Hope saga. But still fun, decent fantasy. Seafort Saga is actually what it's called, after the main character, but all the books have Hope in the title. That has nothing to do with this book, The King by David Feintuck. Sequel to The Still, a decent fantasy novel. Then we have Tales of the Otori, Book 1, Across the Nightingale Floor by Leon Hearn. And this is a set in feudal Japan, a world very similar, anyway, to feudal Japan. There's magic in it. And Takeo is our main character. He lives with this group called the Hidden that believes in the ways of peace. But after his people are slaughtered, he's taken in by the tribe, which are sort of ninja-like characters. And there's a warlord that lives in this castle that has what's called a nightingale floor. And it's this wooden floor that is made so that every board gives off a noise when it's stepped on. So it's supposed to sound like nightingales. So no one can approach this warlord's bedroom, I believe it is, without making any noise because of this floor. And Takeo learns the skills necessary to get to the warlord, because I assume it's the warlord that slaughtered his people. A very fun, interesting, sort of, again, feudal Japanese type fantasy. Not in the sense of like dragons and knights and stuff, but there are mystical elements to the story. And book 1, part of a series, I believe it's 4 books long. And the rest, these are all going to be more media tie-ins. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Creatures of Habit by Tom Fassbender, Jim Pasco, Brian Horton, and Paul Lee. This is an illustrated novella that was published by Dark Horse Comics. A number of these people worked on the Buffy comic books, I believe. And this is simply about a DJ who's involved with vampires. Can't remember if he's a vampire. Who is pumping out the beats. There's a party going on, but all these vampires are coming to town looking to sacrifice a virgin in some ritual. Spike, I believe, gets involved with the bad guys in this story. And of course, Buffy and the Scooby Gang are going to have to put a stop to it. I think it was a decent story. I think the illustrations are probably the big selling point. Beautiful pictures in the book. And a quick read, just a novella where quite a few pages, not half, quite a few illustrated. So not as much story as you might expect from the number of pages and the size and everything. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Creatures of Habit. Followed that up with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The Wisdom of War by Christopher Golden. Back to good old Christopher Golden. Um, so these swamp creatures come to Sunnydale. The description says, the cousin of the creature from the Black Lagoon. Before Buffy can take them all out, the Watchers Council shows up, say they've got it under control, and they somehow spring Faith from prison and are using her as their tool to handle whatever's going on. Buffy has to decide, since she's sort of a free agent at this point, doesn't really work for the Watchers Council anymore. Is she going to team up with the Watchers Council and with Faith, or is there something else going on that's going to keep her away from them? Christopher Golden, great writer. I'm a fan of the character of Faith, and this is in a excuse me, pretty good time frame within the Buffy show. As I said, after Buffy has sort of broken ties with the Watcher Council and gone out on her own. So, Buffy the Vampire Slayer: The Wisdom of War by Christopher Golden. The penultimate book for September 2002. Trilogy of the Second Age, Book 1, Chosen of the Sun, S-U-N, by Richard E. Dansky. And this is from White Wolf. It's based on a role-playing game. And the Second Age is a fantasy world that is the same world as the World of Darkness, which is their vampires, werewolves, mages, all of that stuff. But it is before that, ages before it became a world of darkness. It was this world of fantasy with, warriors and swords and sandals and monsters and magician, sorcerers and all sorts of stuff. So our two main characters essentially are Elizur Wren and Yushev. Not sure about any pronunciations there except Wren. And this first book is building the world. You don't have to have played the game. This book is going to give you all the information you need of what this world is and how it works. It's building the world, introducing us to all these characters as they have some adventures. And I followed that up with Trilogy of the Second Age, Book 2, Beloved of the Dead by Richard E. Dansky, where the story just continues. We get a little bit more world building. Our characters sort of separate and are having their own adventures, but it's all going to come together, let's hope. But just more of this fantasy world that's eventually going to become the world of darkness. I don't know if there are any hints. I don't recall if there's anything that would tell us. I think it stands on its own as just this fantasy world created by White Wolf Publishing. So if you're interested in some relatively light fantasy along the lines of Dungeons and Dragons, the Dragonlance books, that sort of thing, just different types of characters, again based on a role-playing game, so you're going to have these types of characters that one would play in the game. So these different types, just adventuring with a big overarching story. And that's it. That's all I read in September of 2002. Just 9 books. 5 of them media tie-ins. Only one of them, the nonfiction book, that's not part of a series or a sequel of something. But, I think a very interesting group of books. Not that there's how many Buffy books? 3? 3 Buffy books out of 9? That's a third of what I read. That's crazy. And then 2 books in a trilogy. Spoilers, the beginning of the next month I read the 3rd book of the trilogy. There you go. That's everything that I read in September of 2002. And as usual, I'm off. I'm doing this on a different day than I normally would. So I'm just very discombobulated. Did not think of a question ahead of time, although that's usual, so I shouldn't blame it on it being a different day. Although I had said to myself the other day I was going to start thinking of questions ahead of time, and I didn't bother. Um, so I don't really have a question for this time. Uh, so again, I think I'm gonna default to ask me a question down in the comments below. And if you have any questions about the books or comments or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. Try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. All the usual YouTube stuff. And if you'd care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is at Ronan5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, fuzzy animals, is Eric Smith 5757. And if you're on Blue Sky, I am at EL Smith. That's all I've got for you this week. So until next week, read more books.